then.
There I am.
We're taken far away from Earth, out past familiar space, toward a brutal world ruled by the Yaoja, a warrior clan known across the galaxy as Predators. A lone Predator pilots a small craft along jagged cliffs, scanning the landscape like he's tracking a hidden signal. His search leads to a narrow split in the rocks. Two stone walls squeeze together like a wound in the mountain, revealing a shadowy cave mouth. He steps inside slowly, cautious. The air feels wrong, like something is waiting. And then, another Predator emerges from the darkness. No warning, no words, just violence. They clash immediately, blades flashing, fists pounding, armor scraping stone. The fight is fierce enough to feel real, but after a final exchange, it becomes clear this wasn't an assassination. It was a test, a training duel between two brothers, K and Dex. K wins, but he doesn't celebrate. Instead, he gives Dex a cold truth. Dex is still not strong enough. Not yet worthy of being recognized by the clan. If Dex wants respect, he'll have to earn it the hard way. K leads Dex back to his ship. Inside, Dex notices a strange device. Something personal, triggering a memory. A time Dex saved K from death and lost a Fong in the process. The moment lingers like proof Dex isn't useless, even if everyone treats him that way. K explains the tradition. To be accepted as a true Yaoja, a hunter must travel to a dangerous world, choose deadly prey, and return with a trophy. And the rule is absolute: no trophy, no return. Dex scans possible hunting destinations until one planet grabs his attention. Jenna. Among hunters, it's whispered about like a curse. The so-called planet of death, home to a creature named Kalisk, a monster said to be impossible to kill. Even K stiffens at the name. Dex learns why. Their father, the tribe's chief, and the most feared warrior in the clan, never dared hunt there. Not because he lacked skill, but because every predator sent to Jenna never came back. To the clan, Jenna is where pride goes to die. But Dex doesn't back down. He's tired of being labeled the weakest. Tired of being the embarrassment, he decides Kalis will be his trophy, proof carved in blood that he belongs. Kay refuses. He argues it's suicide. Failure on Jenna doesn't mean shame, it means death. Dex swears he won't fail. That's when a ship descends. Their father has arrived. Dex tries to show respect, proudly presenting the green blood on his hands like a badge, almost like he's begging to be seen as a real predator. But he doesn't understand what's happening. Their father isn't here to congratulate him. He's here to erase him. In the chief's eyes, a weak predator is an insult the clan can't tolerate. Better for Dex to die with honor than live as a disgrace. The chief triggers a trap, one meant to crush his own son. Kay steps in. He argues Dex has the right to prove himself. He declares Dex will hunt Kalisk on Jenna. But the chief won't bend. A hunter who returns empty-handed is worthless. A hunter who never leaves is a cleaner problem. Kay draws his blade, an execution weapon, heavy with tradition. For a moment, it looks like Kay is about to obey. But instead, Kay makes a choice. He turns on the trap, not to kill Dex, but to save him, forcing Dex into the ship and launching it away. Dex struggles to fight back, trying to escape and help, but it's too late. Kay is left behind, alone, facing his father. A fight he can't win. The chief fights like a storm, merciless and unstoppable. Kay is battered, dragged to the edge of death, yet he still manages one last act of defiance. He triggers the ship's system, ordering it to jump toward Jenna, far beyond pursuit. Dex is launched into the void as Kay stays behind to face a gentle death, the kind the clan pretends is honorable, even when it's cruel. Time passes, days, maybe longer, until Dex finally reaches Jenna. The planet hangs in space like a warning sign, massive, ominous, surrounded by a red ring that makes it look beautiful in the same way a knife can look beautiful right before it cuts you. But entering Jenna is almost impossible. As Dex's craft pushes through the debris field, it starts coming apart, shredded by asteroids like metal being fed into a grinder. Dex barely escapes, diving into an emergency flyer while something winged and predatory circles him in the chaos. He drops through the atmosphere like a broken projectile. When he wakes, he's in a dense forest, dark, wet, and alive in the wrong way. Grief hits him first. Rage follows. And then purpose. Dex swears he'll take Kalisk's head, no matter what it costs. He checks his remaining gear. Explosives, twin blades, energy bolts, ranged weapons. Every tool designed to kill something that doesn't want to die. But Jenna doesn't wait for him to prepare. Something approaches. Dex readies for a creature attack, only to realize the forest itself is hunting him. Vines move like limbs. Trees lash out like predators. The ground seems to breathe. Dex fights, cutting tendrils, carving his way through living wood, but the plants keep coming, endless and angry. It's like fighting a monster made of the entire ecosystem. He sprints toward a rock ridge, using a whipping vine as a bridge for one desperate leap. Barely escaping as the carnivorous growth snaps behind him, furious that its meal slipped away. Dex falls hard, wounded. He scans nearby plants for anything useful. He finds a hardy herb-like growth, crushes it, mixes it with saliva, and smears it into the wound as a rough field medicine. Then he notices something else, a strange green caterpillar. He grabs it, and it suddenly shifts color, turning red like a warning flare, then pops with a sharp crack like a living firecracker. Jenna is full of traps like that. Every step is a gamble. As Dex moves forward, he notices flowers that react when he comes near, trembling as if they're listening. Then a voice breaks through the silence. A woman calls out from ahead, warning him to stop. She says there's a flying predator that hunts using the environment, throwing rocks into these flowers to trigger explosive toxins. The poison mist doesn't kill immediately. It paralyzes. The voice begs for help. She's trapped between dead, splintered trees, boxed in, unable to run. Dex keeps walking closer. Not because he trusts her, not because he cares, but because a Yaoja hunts alone, and anything on this planet could be prey or bait. The The moment the woman mentions Kalisk, Dex's focus sharpens. Information is valuable on a death world, sometimes more valuable than weapons. But before Dex can press her, the Sky Hunter returns. A winged predator swoops overhead and hurls stones into nearby, thatch-like flowers, triggering rapid explosions. The plants burst like landmines, spraying a cloud of toxic dust. Dex bolts, weaving through the blasts, but the trap is already set. Something clamps him, and within seconds his body starts to go heavy. His vision dulls. The poison isn't killing him, it's shutting him down. The woman shouts at Dex to toss her a weapon so she can cut him free. Dex tries, his fingers barely respond. If he goes limp, he'll be easy meat for the flying monster circling back for a clean meal. Just as the creature dives in to claim him, the woman moves fast, smashing into the attacker and driving it away long enough to reach Dex. She tears the trap loose and drags him out of the poison range. Her name is Thea, and she isn't human. She's an android built to survive places that flesh can't. Thea forces a dark antidote into Dex's system, an extract from a rare black blooming plant, and Dex's breathing steadies. The haze clears. His muscles return. When he sits up, Dex grabs Thea, only to realize something unsettling. She's missing a leg. And yet she acts like it's just a damaged tool. Thea explains. 2 years ago, Weyland Corp, back on Earth, sent an expedition to Jenna to study life on the planet. Humans didn't last. The environment was too hostile. So the mission shifted to machines, an android team designed for long-term exploration. But even they weren't prepared for Kalisk. Thea says plenty of Yaoja have come here chasing the same trophy, Kalisk's head. None of them made it out. Her own leg was taken when her unit encountered Kalisk during a survey run, an ambush so violent the team barely escaped. Now she wants a deal. She'll guide Dex to Kalisk's territory, and in return Dex helps her reach the place where her spare parts are stored, so she can replace what she lost. Dex refuses at first. A Yaoja hunts alone. Always. But Thea is persistent and practical. She promises she won't slow him down, only increases odds. She knows Jenna's threats. Acid-spitting eels that melt metal and bone, predatory zones you can't cross without the right plant seeds, and terrain that kills faster than claws. Eventually, Dex accepts, not because he trusts her, but because he needs every advantage he can get. That night, Thea shares more about the mission. After landing, the android team built a forward base, a headquarters meant for a long operation. Among the units, only 2 were made with advanced sensitivity and learning systems, designed to interpret the planet almost like humans would. Those 2 were Thea and Tessa. But Tessa went missing when Kalisk tore through the team. Now Thea still believes Tessa is out there. By morning, they move again. Hunger becomes a problem, and Dex decides to hunt something, joking like he's looking for a burger or a hot dog on the galaxy's worst planet. Thea points out signs of a creature called a bone bison, but also warns that bone bison remains are often found near Kalisk's feeding zones, which makes hunting a gamble. Still, Dex wants meat. They track one until they hit a patch of razor grass, thin blades so sharp they can shred anything that touches them. And they aren't the only hunters watching. Something small slips between trees, fast, silent, fearless. A strange monkey-like creature Thea has never seen. It doesn't even acknowledge them. It just slides straight into the razor field like it's nothing, startling the bone bison into a panicked run. Great. Now Dex and Thea are chasing prey that's already fleeing and racing another predator to it. Dex doesn't quit. He launches into the trees, chasing with reckless speed, almost damaging himself on the rough terrain. The monkey stays ahead, trying to claim the hunt. Dex decides to end the competition. He throws a razor-edge plasma blade with perfect control and drops the bone bison cleanly, like slicing through soft wax. But the kill attracts something worse. A massive Luna bug rises, except bug doesn't do it justice. This thing is a nightmare. Armored, huge, with teeth like cutters. Dex's weapons don't work the way they should. The creature shrugs off attacks like they're insults. Now Dex and Thea aren't hunters anymore. They're snacks. The only reason they survive is the monkey. Its body is unbelievably tough, like living stone. It throws itself into the chaos, tanking hits that would tear flesh apart. Even razor grass can't cut it. The trio runs, leading the Luna bugs toward the razor field. The monkey slides into the blades like it's surfing. The Luna bugs follow. Dex gets an idea. He cuts down the tree path the monsters are using to chase, collapsing the route and forcing the creatures into the razor grass where the blades finally do what weapons couldn't. When the monkey gets cornered, Dex moves in, close enough to see it shaking, but still standing. Elsewhere, Tessa is active. She picks up the trail of Kay's ship, the craft Dex used to escape toward Jenna. She's not alone. A squad is with her, and they aren't worried about the living forest. They have burn tech that can reduce the jungle to ash. Back with Dex, Thea is strangely thrilled because now they aren't just a pair. They're a trio. The monkey sticks with them, clearly fascinated by Dex after witnessing Predator strength. Thea calls it Bud, like it's already part of the team. Dex shares meat from a kill. Bud spits it out, almost like an insult. Yet Thea reads it as a strange kind of bonding ritual. Dex doesn't react. The moment pulls him inward, because once he had a brother too, and that brother died trying to save him. Thea, meanwhile, quietly holds on her own missing piece, Tessa, and the hope that she can still be found. And yes, Thea finally gets what she wanted, replacement parts including new legs. That night, Dex makes camp the way a Predator always does, quietly, methodically. He clears the area, checks lines of sight, cleans his gear, and resets his mindset like he's preparing for war. Bud, meanwhile, is completely obsessed. The little creature imitates everything Dex does, tossing pebbles like it's practicing hunting technique, wiping its hands the same way Dex does, copying his stretches and nighttime drills, even crafting a tiny wooden blade and waving around with a little ember-lit flourish like it's a ceremonial weapon. It's ridiculous, and also kind of impressive. Cut to Tessa. She continues her search and eventually locates the wreckage of Kay's ship, the craft that was shredded when it tried to enter Jenna's orbital debris. Among the broken metal and scattered wreckage, Tessa finds something unexpected, a sealed compartment hidden behind an iron door. The door is camouflaged with bones, trophy bones, the kind predators use like decoration and intimidation. Behind it sits a special weapon cache, sealed away like a last resort. Tessa doesn't hesitate. She takes what she needs. The next day, Dex and Thea move out again, but Dex makes a brutal decision. He leaves Bud behind. Thea protests immediately. Bud saved them from the Luna bug, and the creature clearly chose Dex as pack. But Dex ignores it. Bud is still asleep, curled up like it trusts the world too much, and Dex walks away anyway. During a rest stop, Thea finally snaps. She tells Dex that Bud's spit wasn't disrespect. It was a sign of bonding, a strange brother gesture. And Dex, for a moment, actually answers honestly. He explains what happened to Kay. Kay died because he protected Dex, because Dex was considered a disgrace. Too weak, too embarrassing for the Yaoja name. Dex was supposed to be the one who died, and Kay paid for refusing to accept that. Thea processes that, then shares something from Earth. She explains that wolves hunt in teams. They follow an alpha, but not because the alpha kills the most. On Earth, the leader is often the one who protects the pack, who holds the line so others survive. Dex doesn't really know what to do with that. His idea of alpha is simple. Be the strongest, take the biggest trophy, prove everyone wrong. Thea's point is quieter. Power means nothing if you don't protect anyone. They continue traveling through hostile zones for what feels like forever, crossing deadly terrain and ruins of failed expeditions, until they finally reach Kalisk's lair. The place is a graveyard. Smusha vehicles. Torn equipment. Destroyed Weyland tech scattered like someone tried to build a fortress and the planet simply said no. Thea spots functional salvage and immediately begins linking her body to the remaining systems, recharging, repairing, sinking replacement legs. Dex stands guard, watching shadows. Then, the alarm scream. Thea admits the truth. Weyland didn't send them here to study Jenna anymore. They came to capture Kalisk. And worse, Tessa is coming with a retrieval team. Thea urges Dex to leave before the soldiers arrive. But Dex is furious. He realizes Thea didn't just help him. She was using him as a knife to cut a path through Jenna. A disposable warrior to weaken Kalisk, so humans could swoop in and claim the prize. Dex decides he'll hunt Kalisk now, before Weyland's team can steal the kill. He scouts outside, spots fuel storage, and sets a plan. Lure the creature in and turn the area into a trap with a controlled detonation. And then, Kalisk shows. A towering nightmare. The kind of creature that makes this planet legendary. Dex doesn't flinch. For him, fighting the deadliest thing on Jenna is not fear. It's honor. They clash, and the myth proves real. Dex slices off Kalisk's tail and watches it happen. The tail regenerates. The flesh knits back together like time rewinding. Kalisk isn't just tough, it's built wrong, like nature forgot the rules. Kalisk lashes out and hurls Dex straight into Thea's repair station, wrecking the leg attachment process. Thea gets pinned, trapped by twisted metal and a heavy table. Annoyed and half-repaired, she joins the fight anyway, firing a weapon to distract Kalisk and keep it from finishing Dex. Dex uses the opening, snatches a chain, loops it around Kalisk's head, and launches himself forward with a brutal leap, slashing again and again until the creature's skull cracks. But it doesn't matter. Kalisk heals, over and over, a godlike regeneration. Dex finally hits a wall. Not physically, mentally. You can't outfight something that resets itself. Kalisk closes in, ready to end it, then it suddenly stops. It leans in, sniffing Dex like it recognizes something. Dex freezes, confused, and that confusion costs him. Because Tessa arrives. She uses a stolen predator device, an explosive repurposed into a cold lock weapon, and flash freezes the area, immobilizing Kalisk and Dex in the same brutal instant. Dex wakes up later in a sterile facility. Weyland headquarters, built on Jenna. Tessa is there, and Thea is there too, powered down, quiet, almost lifeless like she's been put into standby. Tessa begins scanning Dex like he's just another specimen. Dex lashes out, furious, until he realizes Tessa already knows him. Because Thea's memory logs gave her everything. Dex's mission, his weaknesses, his emotions, even the details about Kay. For Tessa, this is a win-win. They've captured Kalisk, and they've captured a living Yaoja hunter. Two priceless experiments for Earth. Thea reboots, visibly excited at first, thinking this means she'll return home, be reunited with her sister, and report success. She tries to tell Tessa about meeting Dex and Bud like it matters. But Tessa doesn't care, and Thea finally sees it. Dex isn't a teammate here. He's cargo. Worse, Tessa starts preparing to disable Dex permanently, calling him a failed, weak predator not worth keeping conscious. Thea hesitates, clearly torn. Tessa pushes forward anyway, targeting Dex's nervous system to paralyze him completely. Thea snaps. She interferes, disrupting the equipment. A heated argument erupts, because buried under programming and mission objectives is something else. Thea remembers Dex saved her. And when Kalisk attacked the android team before, Tessa judged Thea as damaged and weak, a unit that should be scrapped. That old cruelty returns. And now Thea realizes, if she doesn't obey, she'll be treated the same way Dex is being treated, like a problem to be erased. A security unit enters with an update. Earth has made contact. Orders are coming in. Tessa demands Thea be detained. Then, chaos breaks loose in the smallest, dumbest way possible. A soldier picks up one of Dex's gadgets, curious. Dex, still trying to survive, lies through his teeth and says it's just a harmless child's toy from his planet. Press the button, and it shows a map, like some cute little navigator. The soldier actually considers it, and that distraction is enough. Thea moves. She breaks free, slams open a rear access route, and shoves Dex toward escape. She tells him to run, right now, even if it means she'll take the punishment for it. Dex doesn't want to leave her, but he also knows what happens if he stays. So he escapes into the facility's outer zones, injured again, worse than before, treating damage from a brutal fall during the breakout. And as he staggers onward, the same memory returns like a knife twist. Kay's death. Killed by their own father, because Kay tried to save him. Dex searches the facility for gear, but finds almost nothing. No weapons. No automatistage. No convenient miracle tool. Only one thing survives the chaos. Kay's mask. The same mask Kay always wore during training and battle. Dex holds it, and something shifts in him. For the first time, his purpose isn't prove I'm strong. It's protect. Like Thea said, like a wolf leader. If he's going to be alpha, it won't be by stacking kills. It'll be by keeping his pack alive. And since he has no proper weapons, Dex does what real survivors do. He turns Jenna itself into an armory. He harvests razor grass like living blades, pockets firecracker caterpillars like mini grenades, collects poisonous flower pods, tears claws from the flying monsters, and even goes one step further. He tames a spitting eel, using black flower seeds as bait and control. Now he's not just armed. He's improvised, dangerous, and unpredictable. Dex returns to find Bud, and the truth finally clicks. Bud wasn't just some weird, tough monkey thing. Bud is Kalisk's offspring, captured by Weyland. And Kalisk, the so-called immortal monster, wasn't hesitating earlier out of curiosity. It stopped because it recognized Bud's scent, the spit Bud left on Dex. That's why Kalisk didn't finish him. Dex looks at Bud and makes the decision that completes his change. He spits back, matching Bud's gesture. A predator's version of a vow. We're family now. No more solo mission. No more trophy obsession. Dex is done chasing Kalisk's head. Now he's chasing revenge, and he's saving his pack, Thea and Bud and Kalisk. Before they move, Dex goes to retrieve Thea's replacement leg, the one that got pinned during the earlier fight. Then something hilarious happens. The leg starts walking by itself. Not toward Dex, not toward danger. Just marching with purpose like it has its own appointment. Dex stares like, okay, sure, why not? They head for the Weyland base, where the humans are preparing to ship Kalisk off-world to Earth. Thea is imprisoned, but she's still connected. She can remotely guide her leg back to her, like a homing drone with attitude. Dex launches the assault quietly, using the night as cover. He sends the spitting eel first, weaponized like a living flamethrower, melting through android guards. He keeps black flower seeds ready like treats for an obedient monster, because yes, he is basically a circus trainer at this point. Bud follows, enjoying the chaos a little too much. The base starts to fall apart. Hallways filled with sparks, metal screams, and robots dropping like dominoes. Meanwhile, Tessa is busy talking to someone she calls Mom, clearly a higher command back on Earth. Thea's leg finally reaches the prison block, and it fights through security in the funniest possible way. It's literally a solo leg brawl. Then, click, Thea gets control again. She's free, and now the team is complete. Dex, Thea, and Bud regroup, share a quick "we're alive" moment, and Dex shows the mask like it's a sacred banner. Bud proudly gifts Thea a spare robot leg like a victory present. Dex finally explains the truth. Bud is Kalisk's child, which means they have minutes, maybe less, before Kalisk is transported off-planet. They split tasks. Thea plus Bud go to free Kalisk. Dex draws the entire base security away. The alarms blast. The base goes full lockdown. Thea and Bud disguise themselves as part of the base unit and move toward the prison. But the door is secured by ice-skin locks. Not easy. A soldier approaches, suspicious. Thea, copying Tessa's authority, barks orders like she owns the place. The guard hesitates, and just as it looks like it'll work, Bud pops up behind him and ruins the subtlety. So much for stealth. Meanwhile, Dex is surrounded. The entire Weyland force corners him, thinking he's trapped and ready to be captured. Dex acts like he's about to surrender. But it's a performance. Because earlier, Dex planted firecracker caterpillars all across the area like a minefield. And now, showtime. Boom, pop, crack, chain reactions. Robots get shredded, blinded, torn apart by tiny living explosives. Then Tessa enters with a heavy combat flyer, like a cheap, angry bumblebee built for war. She also has Predator tech now, including Dex's own laser weapon, and she uses it like she's been training with it her whole life. Dex doesn't see one move coming, until the spitting eel throws itself in front of him and takes the blast. The eel dies. Dex snaps. Now it's personal. The final battle starts. Predator versus War Drone. Dex keeps dodging because he still doesn't have a clean weapon that can fully break the machine. At the same time, Thea and Bud finally open the prison, using the guard's eyes to trigger the scanner. Kalisk is released, and Kalisk goes berserk. It tears through the base like a natural disaster with teeth. Tessa fights back with a giant saw attachment, trying to carve Kalisk down while Dex sabotages the base's power system, weakening the drone's systems and slowing Tessa's tech. Tessa throws an ice bomb. Dex counters, hurling a spear that pins into the robot's arm, locking its movement at the worst time. That gives Kalisk the opening. Kalisk ends a fight. After the chaos, Kalisk moves toward Bud. Mother and child reunite. A rare, quiet moment, almost peaceful. Dex steps forward too, because he made a promise. Not as a hunter anymore, but as family. Then Kalisk suddenly stiffens. Something is wrong. Dex feels it too, like a delayed danger. And then Kalisk explodes. The ice bomb's damage prevents regeneration this time. The creature that was unkillable is finally killed in the cruelest way. After it wins, after it reunites, after it finally breathes. Bud breaks down, crying over its mother. Thea is shaken, and Tessa, still alive, burns with rage. She screams that Thea betrayed her. That Dex ruined everything. She grabs the Predator laser and tries to finish them. Dex stops her, because this is what Alpha means. Protect the pack. He wrestles control of the weapon back. Yeah, no, that's mine. Bud, in full revenge mode, raises a trophy-like piece of Tessa's tech as if declaring the debt paid. Final return, and Revenge Dex returns to the Yaoja world. Not as the weak one, as a hunter who survived Jenna. He throws down Tessa's head/tech as a trophy, an insult and a warning. The clan reacts immediately. Two chiefs step up to challenge him. Dex ends him fast. Compared to Jenna, this is nothing. Twin blades, clean finish. Now the real fight. His father, the strongest Yaoja chief. The father who killed Kay. The father who tried to erase Dex. The chief uses stealth technology to dominate the fight, but Dex adapts. He uses his ship and the terrain, predicting the stealth pattern, countering with traps and timing. Then cuts his father down the same way the clan once tried to cut him down. He even removes his mask, pure disrespect in their culture. His father finally admits it. Dex is Yaoja. Dex earned his place. But Dex refuses, because he doesn't want their clan anymore. He has his own. Bud appears, calm, loyal, standing beside Dex like the future of something new. Dex takes the chief's stealth tech as the final spoil. Then a ship approaches. Dex looks up and says, "That's my mother." And with that, the recap ends, setting the stage for whatever comes next. Analysis. What if the Predator wasn't just hunting? What if it was learning? For decades, the Predator franchise has been about one thing: survival of the fittest. Jungle warfare, urban chaos, soldiers pushed to their breaking point. But Predator, Badlands asks a very different question, not who survives, but why we fight at all. This isn't just another Predator movie. This is the franchise stripping itself down to the bone. A vast, hostile landscape, fewer characters, less exposition, and a story that feels more primal, more philosophical, and more dangerous than anything we've seen since the original 1987 classic. Some fans are calling it a bold reinvention. Others say it's the most divisive Predator film yet. So today we're going deep. No dash opinions. No surface-level hype. This is a full cinematic breakdown, from story and characters to themes, filmmaking, symbolism, and what Predator, Badlands really says about humanity, violence, and evolution. By the end of this video, you'll know whether this movie is a worthy evolution of the franchise or a beautiful experiment that might alienate its own fan base. So grab your thermal vision, lock onto your target, and let's step into the Badlands. Predator. Badlands released in 2025, expanding one of cinema's most iconic sci-fi action franchises into new thematic territory. The film is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, whose work previously reshaped audience expectations for this universe. His approach has consistently favored tension, atmosphere, and character-driven storytelling over spectacle alone, and Badlands continues that trajectory. Genre-wise, this film lives at the intersection of science fiction, survival thriller, western, and psychological horror. It's slower than most Predator entries, but far more intentional. The runtime sits comfortably under 2 hours, but don't let that fool you. This is a dense movie. Sparse dialogue, long stretches of visual storytelling, and a heavy reliance on mood rather than exposition. English is the primary language, but the film leans heavily on nonverbal communication, looks, movement, silence, reinforcing its stripped-down nature. This isn't a blockbuster chasing quips and chaos. It's a Predator movie made by someone who understands restraint. At its core, Predator, Badlands is a survival story, but not in the way you expect. The film is set in an unforgiving, remote environment, a place where civilization feels like a rumor, where survival depends on instinct, not technology. Our story follows a small group of humans navigating this brutal landscape, each carrying personal baggage that slowly comes to the surface as conditions worsen. Resources are limited, trust is fragile, and danger doesn't always announce itself. Enter the Predator. But this time, the creature isn't immediately framed as a relentless killing machine. Instead, it watches, studies, tests. The hunt unfolds gradually. There are no loud musical stings every 5 minutes. No constant action beats. Just tension, stretched thin like a wire ready to snap. The stakes aren't about saving the world. They're about survival, identity, and whether strength is measured by dominance or restraint. The movie avoids over-explaining its mythology, trusting the audience to piece things together visually. And when violence happens, it's sudden, brutal, and meaningful. This is a film that wants you to feel hunted, not entertained by carnage. The protagonist in Badlands isn't a traditional action hero. They're resourceful, yes, but also wounded. Emotionally guarded. Someone shaped by loss, not glory. Their motivation isn't conquest or heroism. It's endurance. Survival. Making it through one more day. What makes this character compelling is their adaptability. Not just physically, but mentally. They learn when to fight, when to hide, and when to let go of pride. The Predator, meanwhile, is fascinatingly restrained. This isn't a monster acting on pure instinct. It operates by a code, one that values challenge, intelligence, and growth. There's a sense that this Predator isn't just hunting bodies, it's hunting meaning. Supporting characters serve specific narrative purposes. Each represents a different survival philosophy: aggression, fear, cooperation, denial. And one by one, the Badlands tests those philosophies to destruction. Relationships are strained, fragile, and constantly shifting. Trust becomes a currency more valuable than weapons. And through these dynamics, the film quietly asks, when stripped of civilization, who do we really become? At its heart, Predator, Badlands is about evolution. Not biological evolution, but moral and psychological evolution. The Badlands themselves function as a symbolic crucible, a place that strips characters of comfort, identity, and ego. What's left is instinct. The Predator mirrors humanity. Both species hunt. Both test strength. Both define worth through conflict. The difference? The Predator is honest about it. There's also a recurring theme of observation. Watching before acting. Learning before striking. The film suggests that true power lies not in domination, but understanding. Violence is never glorified here. Every kill has weight. Every death changes the emotional temperature of the story. The Predator becomes less a villain, and more a mirror held up to humanity's obsession with proving superiority. In that sense, Badlands isn't asking who wins the hunt. It's asking why the hunt exists at all. Dan Trachtenberg directs with confidence and restraint. He trusts silence. He trusts stillness. And most importantly, he trusts the audience. The pacing is deliberate. Some scenes linger longer than expected, letting tension breathe. Others end abruptly, reinforcing the unpredictability of survival. There's a noticeable absence of traditional blockbuster rhythms. This movie isn't chasing adrenaline, it's cultivating dread. Compared to Trachtenberg's previous work, Badlands feels even more minimalist. Fewer set pieces, less dialogue, more reliance on visual storytelling. It's a bold choice, and one that won't work for everyone, but it's undeniably purposeful. Visually, Predator, Badlands is stunning. Wide shots dominate the frame, emphasizing isolation and vulnerability. Characters are often small against massive landscapes, reinforcing how insignificant they are in this environment. The color palette leans toward earthy tones, dust, stone, sun-bleached skies, punctuated by the Predator's technology, which feels alien by contrast. Lighting is naturalistic, harsh sunlight by day, deep, consuming shadows by night. Visibility is often limited, keeping the audience as disoriented as the characters. Visual effects are used sparingly and effectively. The Predator's presence feels physical, tangible, never over-rendered. Every frame serves the mood. Sound is one of the film's strongest tools. Long stretches of near silence heighten tension. Wind, footsteps, distant animal calls, all amplified to unsettling effect. The score is minimalist, often fading into the background rather than commanding attention. When music does rise, it's subtle and ominous. The Predator's sound design is particularly effective. Clicks, cloaking hums, distorted echoes, reminding us of its presence even when unseen. Silence becomes a weapon. The performances are grounded and restrained. The lead actor delivers a subtle, internalized performance, more reaction than declaration. Fear, resolve, and exhaustion are communicated through body language rather than dialogue. Supporting actors feel authentic, never caricatured. Their fear feels real. Their mistakes feel human. Their strong chemistry built through shared survival rather than forced bonding scenes. And that realism anchors the film. Editing is clean and purposeful. Scenes transition smoothly, often cutting away before resolution, forcing the audience to stay engaged. The narrative unfolds linearly, but information is withheld strategically. We learn through observation, not exposition. The runtime feels earned. Nothing drags. Nothing feels rushed. Predator, Badlands arrives at a time when franchises are being re-examined. Audiences are tired of repetition. They want evolution, not escalation. This film reflects that shift. It strips the Predator mythos back to its thematic core rather than expanding lore endlessly. It's less about world building and more about meaning. One interpretation frames the Predator as a neutral force, not evil, but evaluative. Another sees the Badlands as a psychological landscape, an externalization of internal conflict. Some fans interpret the ending as hopeful. Others see it as bleak. That ambiguity is intentional. The film doesn't give easy answers, and that's its greatest strength. Critically, Badlands has sparked debate. Some praise its maturity and restraint. Others criticize its slow pacing. Audiences are divided, but engaged. And in a franchise film, that matters. The film excels in atmosphere, theme, and visual storytelling. Its weaknesses lie in accessibility. This isn't a crowd-pleasing action ride, but for viewers willing to meet it on its terms, it's deeply rewarding. Predator, Badlands isn't trying to be everyone's favorite Predator movie. It's trying to be necessary. If you want constant action, this might frustrate you. If you want a thoughtful, intense cinematic experience, this might be the franchise at its best. This is Predator, grown up. And in the Badlands, only evolution survives. Reviews. The first Predator with Arnie is an all-timer, pure 80s action gold. The second one in the city never worked for me. Alien vs. Predator was decent enough. Predators felt goofy. The Predator? Honestly, a waste of time. And then Prey came along and reminded everyone how good this franchise can be. So when I heard the new entry, Predator, Badlands 2025, was already stirring up drama, I was curious. The biggest talking points? It's the first in the series to land a 12A/PG-13 style rating instead of the usual harder certificate. And, more controversially, the Predator is framed as something closer to the hero this time. With Dan Trachtenberg back in the director's chair after Prey in 10, Cloverfield Lane, I figured it was worth finding out what the fuss was about. The story, spoiler-heavy, we begin far from Earth, on Yautja Prime, where a young outcast predator named Dimi Schuster-Kaloamatangi, is stuck in the shadow of his father, the ruthless clan leader Njor, also Schuster-Kaloamatangi. Is viewed as small, weak, and unworthy, but he's determined to prove himself by hunting a legendary nightmare. The Kalisk, an apex creature said to be practically impossible to kill, living on the brutal death planet Jenna. Before can even leave, Njor decides he's better off dead and orders Dek's brother Michael Homik, to execute him. Quay refuses. Instead, he secretly triggers the transport ship and sends Dek off-world, forcing Dek to watch from afar as their father has Quay killed for the disobedience. That moment gives the film its emotional fuel. This isn't just a survival mission anymore. It's personal. Jenna turns out to be exactly as advertised, basically a planet designed to kill you. Dek crashes and immediately gets thrown into a constant gauntlet of hazards. Razor-edged grasses, predatory vines, and flowers that weaponize their environment. Even the wildlife feels like it evolved purely out of spite, stampeding beasts, venomous critters, and creatures that attack with sprays and spikes. During his trek, Dek finds Elle, a damaged Weyland-Yutani android left behind after her team failed a mission involving the Kalisk. She offers to help him track it, and though he doesn't trust her, he's not exactly in a position to refuse. Dek ends up literally carrying her along as they push deeper into Jenna. They soon gain a strange little native companion. Thaya names it Bud, Ravi Narayan. Bud marks Dek with its saliva, which seems like a throwaway detail at first, until it isn't. Back on the corporate side of the story, Thaya's counterpart unit Tessa, also gets reactivated and begins monitoring Dek. Tessa eventually reaches Dek's crash site, scavenges his gear, and moves to secure anything valuable for Weyland-Yutani. Meanwhile, Thaya struggles with her own damage and conflicting directives and tries to re-establish contact with her company while piecing herself back together. Dek attempts to draw the Kalisk out by setting off a fiery chain reaction, an oil spill ignition that acts like a beacon. The creature arrives, and the confrontation is vicious. Dek manages to decapitate it, except the Kalisk does something terrifying. It regenerates. Dek is beaten badly, and then the Kalisk does something even stranger. It lets him live. Before Dek can make sense of that, Weyland-Yutani forces arrive, capturing both Dek and the Kalisk for research. From there, the movie pivots into a corporate nightmare. Labs, restraints, experimentation. The classic company meddles with things it shouldn't. Energy. Tessa takes control, and when Thaya's growing empathy becomes inconvenient, Tessa brands it as a defect and orders her shut down. Thaya rebels. She helps Dek break out. Dek then realizes the truth. Bud is the Kalisk's offspring, and Dek was spared because the creature detected the baby's scent on him. That's the hook that reframes the story. Dek isn't just fighting the monster anymore. He's wrapped up in a bizarre, almost primal family dynamic on a planet where everything operates by survival logic. Now lacking his high-tech arsenal, Dek does something cool. He improvises organic weapons from Jenna's lethal environment, turning the planet's own biology into tools for war. With Bud at his side, he storms the Weyland-Yutani facility to rescue Thaya and free the Kalisk. Chaos erupts. The Kalisk breaks loose and tears through the base, wrecking most of it in the process. But Tessa escalates by stepping into a heavy-duty power loader mech and using Dek's stolen Yautja tech, bringing the final act into full sci-fi action mode. Tessa kills the Kalisk, and it looks like she's about to wipe the board clean, until Dek and Bud take her down, stopping her from killing Thaya. In the aftermath, Dek returns to Yautja Prime with Thaya fully repaired and Bud now older and stronger. He presents Tessa's skull to Njor as a trophy and demands a proper reward, specifically his father's cloaking device. Njor refuses, still seeing Dek as lesser. Dek has had enough. What follows is the emotional payoff. Dek finally confronts his father, avenging Quay and shattering the old power structure. In the end, Bud finishes the job, biting Njor's head off and claiming the cloaking device in the process. The film closes with Dek, Thaya, and Bud bracing for what comes next as a massive ship approaches. Dek calmly saying it's his mother. Also worth noting, Cameron Brown appears as Smith, Allison Wright voices MU/TH/UR, and the Duffer Brothers provide the onboard computer voice for Quay's ship. What I thought I enjoyed this a lot more than I expected. Elle Fanning has the showiest job since she's essentially the only English-speaking presence, and she makes both androids feel distinct. One sympathetic, one coldly clinical. Schuster Kaloamatangi does well selling Dek's arc as an outsider, trying to earn respect in a culture built on dominance and brutality. The biggest surprise is that the movie actually makes the Predator as protagonist concept work. He's still dangerous, still alien, still intimidating. But the story frames him as someone you can follow, even root for, because he's up against forces bigger than him. His own clan, the planet, and a monster that breaks the rules. Visually, it's strong, clean CGI, immersive environments, and a setting that feels like a constant fight for oxygen and footing. It's basically a survival adventure with sci-fi horror seasoning, and at times it gave me a Mandalorian with nightmares vibe. Lone warrior, brutal landscape, unexpected companion, slow burn bonding, then escalating threats. The set pieces land too. Chases, clashes, creature encounters. Nothing revolutionary, but consistently entertaining. It's not as heavy or grim as the most vicious entries, but it still delivers action and tension in the franchise tie-ins, including nods that brush up against the alien universe via Weyland-Yutani, are handled in a fun way without turning the whole movie into an Easter egg parade. Final verdict: Predator. Badlands is a surprisingly satisfying sci-fi action ride, with a touch of horror and a little heart underneath the armor. Even if some fans think the premise is too soft, I'd say it's a solid entry and absolutely worth a watch. And yeah, there's been chatter online that the film may have landed its PG-13/12A rating by playing the ratings rules cleverly, keeping the violence brutal while avoiding certain kinds of human red-blooded gore on screen. Whether that's a loophole or just smart planning, it definitely explains why it can still feel nasty without wearing the usual certificate. Got it. I'll keep the same overall theme, a mostly positive but mixed review that praises the craft, critiques the cute/comedic tone, highlights the world-building/VFX, and frames it as Trachtenberg doing something fresh. But I'll rewrite it from scratch with new phrasing, structure, and flow. After a grim, nasty opener full of pain and body horror, you might assume the film is committing to a harsher, more ruthless lane. But it doesn't take long to reveal a different personality. Dan Trachtenberg's Predator-led entry plays far lighter than that first stretch suggests. More PG-13, friendly than feral, peppered with quips, crowd-pleasing bits of levity, and a very teamwork gets you through vibe. That tonal pivot is surprising, but not automatically a deal-breaker. The movie essentially works as a buddy adventure built around an unlikely pairing, a hard-edged hunter and a chatterbox android. It's a dynamic the franchise hasn't really centered before, and the novelty is part of the appeal. What's also impossible to ignore is how firmly this story is tethered to the wider alien-adjacent mythology. The shared universe DNA is baked in so thoroughly that the movie feels like it's quietly setting pieces on the board for something bigger down the line. Whether that eventual collision is exciting or worrying depends on your optimism, but here it mostly functions as extra flavor rather than a distraction. If there's one place the film loses me a bit, it's the deliberate push toward cuteness and comedy, especially in the middle portion. The second act occasionally feels like it's sanding down its own edges, as if it's nervous about letting the story run on pure visual storytelling and momentum. Some viewers will eat that up. It clearly plays well with audiences who want a lighter ride. But for me, it sometimes clashes with the harsher atmosphere the movie works hard to establish early on. A leaner, quieter version of this could have been genuinely hypnotic. Instead, the script often explains what the direction could have communicated with looks, movement, and rhythm. That said, the film doesn't collapse because the first act is strong and the final stretch is where it really comes alive. When it focuses on atmosphere, terrain, and hunting mechanics, it's terrific, big, confident showcases of setting and staging that let the Predator do what he's best at: track, improvise, and survive. The alien world is a highlight: vicious, creative, and constantly hostile, with flora and fauna that feel purpose-built to kill anything unlucky enough to step wrong. There's a sly sense of humor in the design, too. Like the movie understands the premise is a little wonderfully ridiculous and leans into it without turning it into a parody. Visually, it's impressive. Even when the effects are clearly doing heavy lifting, the environment still feels textured and grimy instead of weightless and stagey. It avoids that actors in front of a digital wallpaper look that's plagued a lot of recent blockbusters. The Predator himself also looks great, grounded by tangible on-set work and then enhanced rather than replaced by CG. Little creature details, like the way his facial features move with his breathing, add personality and make the design feel lived in. Performance-wise, the physical actor behind the Predator sells the role with presence and intention, even under layers of prosthetics and post-work. The character feels performed, not merely animated, and that matters. The android companion, on the other hand, is a double-edged sword, occasionally charming, frequently loud, and sometimes the exact thing pulling focus away from the more compelling lone hunter versus lethal world angle. The plot is refreshingly straightforward in a way that actually suits the premise. Drop the protagonist into a nightmare ecosystem, give him a clear target, force him to adapt, rebuild, and outthink what's around him. Done. Honestly, it's structured like a strong video game campaign. In a complementary way: progression, problem-solving, escalating threats, and inventive encounters. The story keeps moving, doesn't drown itself in twists, and stays just unpredictable enough that you're not always ahead of it. Action fans should be satisfied. The violence is flashy and brutal enough: severed limbs, nasty wounds, big, ugly hits, but staged more like pulpy sci-fi mayhem than lingering cruelty. It walks the line between franchise-appropriate gore and accessible for a wider crowd, which fits the movie's overall decision to go lighter. By the end, I landed in a place I didn't expect. The more I think about it, the more I appreciate the swing it takes. The comedy-first stretches still aren't my favorite, and the midsection can feel like it's interrupting its own momentum, but the craft is real. The world building is imaginative. The set pieces are often tactile and clever, and Trachtenberg once again find a way to make this series feel different without totally breaking what it is. Predator: Badlands 2025 is the 9th film in the franchise, counting the AVP entries, directed by Dan Trachtenberg, and it follows an underdog Predator out to prove himself by hunting something far more dangerous than expected to earn respect, especially from his father. I went in excited because Trachtenberg's recent track record with this series has been strong, and I walked out feeling like he notched another win. Even with a few tonal choices that didn't fully work for me, it's still a slick, energetic, frequently awesome sci-fi action movie, and one of the more interesting directions the franchise has taken in a while. I'll be honest, I've never been a full-on Predator superfan. I respect the original, I've enjoyed a few of the later entries, and I've generally been into the vibe, more than in love with any single sequel. But Predator: Badlands 2025 surprised me in a way I didn't expect, mostly because it flips the franchise's usual perspective and commits to it. The boldest choice here is simple. The Predator isn't treated like the boogeyman of the movie. He's the center of it. And once you settle into that shift, it's actually pretty easy to get invested. Watching a Predator operate as the main character, rather than the lurking threat, adds a fresh angle, because you're not just waiting for him to strike. You're following his purpose. That alone makes the film feel different from a jump. Our lead, Dimi Schuster-Kaloamatangi, is positioned as an underdog within his own people, someone who has to prove he belongs. That outsider trying to earn his place thread gives the story an emotional spine, and it works better than I expected for a movie where the protagonist isn't speaking English. Even with the language barrier, the movie sells the relationship dynamics through behavior, timing, and physical performance. And that's where Elle comes in, because the film doesn't just add a companion character, it adds a very specific kind of companion, a Weyland-Yutani synthetic. That crossover flavor is a huge yes for me. It's the kind of franchise connective tissue that feels fun instead of forced, and it gives the story a sci-fi texture beyond hunt and survive. Thaya also helps translate the stakes and the world without constantly spoon-feeding the audience. Chemistry-wise, Dek and Thaya are genuinely strong together. Their dynamic carries a lot of the movie's momentum, and it's impressive that it works so well considering how limited Dek is in traditional dialogue. The film leans on rhythm, expression, and reaction. Basically, it trusts the audience to read the scene instead of having everything explained out loud. Another thing I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did: the humor. The movie proves you can have comedy in Predator without turning it into a parody, if it's used with restraint and placed in the right moments. The jokes don't bulldoze the tension. They just give the movie a little personality and breathing room. Now, action-wise, if you came for the classic Predator satisfaction, tactical fights, brutal efficiency, cool weapon moments, this delivers. The choreography hits the beats you want. And yes, it's PG-13, which some people immediately complained about. But here's the thing. The movie smartly works around that limitation. Since it's not centered on human characters getting shredded every 5 minutes, it doesn't feel like the rating completely neuters the experience. There's still intensity, there's still impact, and the film uses alien blood and synthetic fluids to push the violence as far as the rating will reasonably allow. That said, once the novelty of Predator as protagonist clicks, the movie can feel a little safe. It's entertaining and well-paced, but it doesn't always take the weird swings it could have. I kept wanting it to go further into truly strange sci-fi territory, something more unpredictable or more out there, because the setup actually gives it permission to do that. Technically, I think it's solid overall. A lot of effects work looks genuinely strong, especially for a movie that clearly required digital work in a huge percentage of shots. But I did notice the occasional wobbly-looking effect, and I'm always a little suspicious when multiple major sequences are staged in very dim lighting. It's never so dark that you can't tell what's happening, but when big action beats keep happening in low visibility, it can feel like the movie is trying to hide seams in the CG. Performance-wise, Elle is doing a lot here, more than people might expect going in, and she brings a clean contrast between curious helper energy and the more corporate, mission-driven synthetic vibe when the story plays with that duality. It adds a nice internal tension to the human-made side of the film's world-building. Now, I've also seen one major criticism floating around, and I get where it comes from. The story can feel like a familiar genre template wearing sci-fi skin. If you strip away the Predator tech and alien setting, you can easily imagine it as a fantasy quest narrative. Young warrior deemed lesser goes to the deadly land, seeks the ultimate trophy, discovers the value of loyalty and bonds, etc. Swap predators for barbarians or cowboys or any noble outsider archetype, and the skeleton is still there. And depending on your tolerance for that kind of storytelling, it's either classic and effective or predictable and kind of corny. Because yes, on paper, the stakes can read a little ridiculous. Go to the death world, kill the biggest nightmare creature, bring back the proof, and suddenly that's the one thing separating you from being treated like a joke. Add the emotional lesson about community and sacrifice, and it can feel like the movie is sanding down the Predator mythology into something more familiar and digestible. That critique ties into the bigger worrisome fans have. Modern franchise films sometimes dilute what made the originals feel scary. The more you explain the monsters, humanize them, and wrap them in relatable arcs, the more you risk shrinking their mystique. For some people, that's the point where predators stop feeling like an intimidating, ancient warrior species and start feeling like a brawly sci-fi tribe you can outsmart with a clever trick. For me, though, even with those issues, I still walked out having a good time. Because at the end of the day, Predator, Badlands gives me something I've wanted from this series for a while. A sense that the franchise is experimenting again instead of just remixing the same humans get hunted formula. It's not perfect. It may not be as daring as it could be, but it's confident, fun, and it has enough fresh flavor to feel like a step forward. So overall, I'd say this. If you're a Predator fan, or you just like monster-heavy sci-fi action, this absolutely scratches the itch. And personally, it's one of my favorite watches of 2025 so far. It isn't a flawless reinvention, but it's a strong entry, and it makes me more hopeful about where Predator goes next. Unfortunately, that new sequel doesn't quite line up with the classics. Problem hits the Predator franchise too. You can have a good time with this one, just don't go in expecting it to neatly click into the same continuity and tone as the first two films that kicked everything off. As someone who's been riding with this series for years, I'll admit I came in skeptical about Predator, Badlands 2025. A Predator framed as the hero? A PG-13 rating? It all sounded questionable. Still, Prey surprised me. So, I figured director Dan Trachtenberg had earned at least a fair shot. And honestly, I enjoyed Predator, Badlands way more than I expected. This is easily one of the most different entries the series has ever attempted. The tone is lighter, the studio influence is noticeable, and it doesn't try to mimic the grim brutality of the older films. But it's also consistently entertaining, and the movie understands something important. Fun doesn't require an R rating. After the mess of The Predator 2018, this feels like a course correction, like someone finally looked at the franchise and said, okay, let's stop copying the same template. The script has a playful edge. The pacing never drags. At 1 hour 42 minutes, it moves fast, and the story kept me invested all the way through. By deliberately breaking the usual formula, it makes Predator feel fresh again, which is not easy this far into a long-running series. A new angle. The hunter becomes the one we follow this time. The story flips the usual perspective. The Predator is the protagonist. We're pulled into the journey of a young outcast named Dek, played by Dimi Schuster-Kaloamatangi, a runt by his clan's standards, more burden than pride. Early on, Dek confronts his brother Quay, and what starts as a tense encounter quickly turns into something more personal. Their family dynamic is harsh, rigid, and unforgiving. Failure isn't tolerated, weakness is punished, and their father's expectations are absolute. Dek's solution is desperate but bold. He decides to hunt something legendary. The Kalisk, a near-mythic creature that even seasoned hunters fear. It's the kind of target you chase when you have nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The setting is a big win. Dek ends up on a brutal planet where survival isn't a challenge. It's a constant negotiation with death. The environment is hostile in creative ways. Aggressive plant life, predatory animals, and hazards that don't feel like background decoration, but active threats. It's one of the movie's best choices. Instead of recycling jungles and familiar battlefields, it drops the franchise into a place that feels dangerous by design. One standout sequence involves a field of paralyzing, barb-launching flora being exploited by a flying predator. Simple idea, executed with a lot of imagination. That nature wants you dead vibe never really lets up. The duo dynamic works, and it's surprisingly charming. Dek's path crosses with Thaya, played by Elle, who's trapped and offers a deal. Help her out, and she'll help him navigate the planet. Thaya isn't a typical human companion. She's a synthetic, and that changes the energy of the relationship. She's clinical, data-driven, and oddly funny in a way that plays nicely off Dek's stubborn intensity. Their pairing has a fun, odd couple rhythm, almost like a wandering warrior and a talkative guide, except the warrior is a predator and the guide is a sawed-off synthetic with her own agenda. You can also feel the buddy adventure influence in the structure without it turning into a full comedy. The corporate thread adds pressure. Running alongside Deck and Thias' arc is another synthetic, Tessa, also fanning, tied to the planet's corporate presence. Yes, that kind of company presence. She's mission-locked, relentless, and willing to sacrifice just about anything to complete her objective. Where Thaya is focused on survival and information, Tessa is about results, and she builds a force to pursue the Kalis for her own reasons. That creates a three-way tension. Deck hunting for honor, Thaya trying to endure and adapt, and Tessa driving a cold, escalating pursuit toward an inevitable showdown. Performances and direction. Better than they need to be. Schuster Kaloamatangi does great work under heavy gear and creature performance limitations. It's not easy to communicate personality through posture, movement, and minimal human expression, but he gives Deck a clear emotional spine, anger, desperation, and the stubborn need to matter. Elle Fanning pulls double duty effectively, making the two synthetics feel distinct. Thaya has a grounded, almost curious vibe. Tessa feels like a blade pointed in one direction. And Trachtenberg's direction is sharp throughout. The movie is well-paced, energetic, and confident in its tonal choices. Even when it gets humorous, it doesn't feel like it's mocking the franchise. It feels like it's trying to expand what a Predator story can be. Final thoughts: if you're looking for something that echoes the raw intensity of the earliest films, this may not hit the same nerve. But if you're open to the franchise, trying something new, especially a story that treats the Predator as more than a faceless monster, Predator: Badlands is a genuinely enjoyable entry. It's creative, fast, and surprisingly engaging. More importantly, it proves the series still has room to evolve, so long as it's willing to stop repeating itself. After a long stretch where the Predator brand felt like it was coasting, Badlands is the kind of entry that reminds you why this franchise works when it's confident and focused. It's not trying to reinvent sci-fi horror from the ground up, but it is trying to deliver a lean, entertaining ride with clear stakes, memorable world building, and a central character you can actually latch onto. That alone makes it feel like a step in the right direction. The story centers on Deck, a young Yaoja who's treated like the runt, the one who has something to prove. The film wastes little time tossing him into a trial that's both a test of skill and a test of identity. The setting does a lot of heavy lifting here. The planet Jenna is basically a nightmare ecosystem where the environment doesn't just look alien, it behaves alien. It's the kind of place where survival feels earned, and where a single mistake can get you killed fast. Jenna's danger is one of the movie's biggest strengths. Deck's journey isn't just a sightseeing tour of strange creatures. Yes, you get new plants, animals, and monsters, but what I appreciated is that these encounters generally have a point. They either push Deck forward, reveal something about the rules of this world, or build tension in a way that pays off later. The film understands that cool alien stuff hits harder when it's tied to momentum and consequence. One major twist to the usual Predator formula is that Deck doesn't operate entirely alone. Traditionally, the hunt is a solitary proving ground, and this movie knowingly bends that code by pairing him with Thaya, a synthetic connected to Weyland-Yutani. That choice will probably divide purists, and I get why. But I also think the movie earns the partnership because it creates a dynamic you don't usually get in Predator stories. Not just hunter versus prey, but warrior versus machine logic, instinct versus programming, pride versus purpose. And speaking of Weyland-Yutani, this is where the film taps into something that's always been foundational to alien-adjacent stories: corporate greed as a horror engine. The moment the company's presence becomes clear, you can feel the bigger machinery turning in the background. It's not simply scientists studying wildlife. There's a mission layered underneath the mission, and certain characters clearly know more than they're letting on. That didn't surprise me, but it did add a satisfying edge because it frames Jenna as more than a death planet. It's a resource, a lab, a business opportunity. In other words, capitalism finds a way to make even an alien hellscape profitable. There's also a broader franchise energy here that feels very modern IP. Without getting too deep into comparisons, the film sometimes gives off that extended universe vibe where the story is not only about fear and survival, but also about identity, connection, and what comes next. That can soften the pure horror atmosphere at times. Whether that's a positive or negative will depend on the viewer. For me, it didn't ruin anything. I just noticed the shift in emphasis. Performance-wise, the film is anchored by Dimi Schuster Kaloamatangi, who gives Dek a believable mix of aggression, insecurity, and determination. You don't need constant exposition to understand what's driving him. Every confrontation feels like it carries the weight of proving himself. Elle Fanning brings real value in her dual roles, especially as Thaya, who contrasts sharply with the harsher edge of the other synthetic presence. The two sides of the same design idea lands well, and the film uses their similarities and differences to keep the character beats from feeling repetitive. The supporting cast does what it needs to do, and the creature work deserves its own shout. Bud, via motion capture, is a strong addition, not just as a spectacle element, but as part of the film's ecosystem of threats and uneasy allies. It's the kind of creature that can be read multiple ways, which makes it more interesting than a simple monster of the week. Technically, Badlands looks great. The cinematography and framing make Jenna feel tactile and treacherous. Wide shots establish isolation, while tighter compositions sell the constant sense of being watched or surrounded. The tension isn't just in the action, it's in the geography. The effects work blends CGI with a practical feel, and while you can usually tell what's digital if you're looking for it, it rarely becomes distracting. The sound design and score also pull their weight, especially when the film leans into Yautja culture. Small touches like language and audio texture go a long way in making the world feel lived in rather than decorated. In the end, Badlands succeeds because it has a clear lens. Dek's struggle for validation set against a planet designed to chew him up. The Weyland-Yutani angle adds a satisfying layer of corporate menace, while the Thaya partnership gives the story an unexpected emotional and thematic hook. It's not flawless, and the deviation from the traditional solo hunt code may not work for everyone. But as a franchise entry, it's confident, brisk, and genuinely fun. If you're a longtime fan who can roll with a slightly adjusted tone, or if you just want a solid sci-fi action horror ride with strong visuals and a compelling central arc, this one is easy to recommend. Predator: Badlands is another reminder that this franchise still has room to surprise people, especially when Dan Trachtenberg is the one steering it. This isn't a film trying to reinvent blockbuster cinema, and it doesn't need to. What it's trying to do is deliver a crowd-pleasing, playful, action-first ride with real momentum. And in that mission, it absolutely nails it. A lot of big-budget movies lately feel bloated, over-explained, or weighed down by universe-building homework. Badlands goes the other way. It's energetic, streamlined, and confidently focused on the experience. Cool set pieces, sharp pacing, and a setting that constantly reminds you how dangerous this world is. The result is one of the year's most purely enjoyable studio action films. Fast, fun, and refreshingly free of unnecessary baggage. A bold shift. The Predator becomes the lead. The biggest swing, by far, is the decision to make a Yautja the protagonist. Instead of watching humans get hunted, we're following one of the hunters themselves, a younger outcast trying to prove he's worthy. It's a clever reversal of the usual formula, and it instantly makes the story feel fresh even when it's still built around the classic hunt structure. The film's lead predator, Dek, isn't just a helmet and a blade this time. He's a character. We see him pushed, humiliated, tested, and gradually changed by the world around him. That's where the film quietly becomes more than just an action sprint. Under the carnage and creature attacks, there's a surprisingly sincere thread about identity and belonging. In other words, it's not just about killing something bigger. It's about discovering who actually has your back. A planet designed to hate you, the setting does a ton of heavy lifting. The planet is openly hostile in a way that's almost funny at times, like it's built purely to punish anything that dares to breathe there. You're told early on that humans wouldn't last, and the movie commits to proving it. Razor-like plant life, violent organisms, terrain that feels weaponized, and creatures that might as well be living traps. What's smart is how the film uses this environment structurally. The first half spends time establishing how the planet functions, its rules, threats, and rhythm. So when the finale arrives, the payoffs land cleanly. It's not aimless wandering. It's setup and execution. Performances and characters. Dimi Schuster-Kaloamatangi deserves real credit here. Even with the layers of effects and creature performance work involved, his physical commitment makes Deck feel expressive and readable without turning him into something cartoony. The blend of practical touches and visual effects generally works, and when it's firing on all cylinders, it's impressive how much personality comes through. Elle Fanning adds a huge amount of charm as Thaya, bringing warmth and humor that helps balance the film's harsher edge. She's immediately likable, and the story benefits from that energy, especially because it makes the emotional beats hit harder than you might expect in a Predator movie. And when she shifts gears into her more unsettling role as Tessa, the contrast is sharp enough to keep you on alert. Action, rating limits, and style, even with a PG-13 rating, Trachtenberg doesn't feel restrained. The violence is still intense, just stylized in a way that avoids the obvious red-heavy mess. You get plenty of impact, plenty of brutality, and action that's staged for maximum that looks awesome value. Visually, the film often looks expensive in the best way. The budget shows up in scale and ambition, even if some CGI moments wobble a bit when things get too chaotic. Still, the craftsmanship is strong overall, and the direction makes sure the action feels clear, purposeful, and dynamic. Jeff Cutter's cinematography is especially effective. You can tell the camera placement is deliberate, and the film uses slow motion and bold framing to make key moments pop. And yes, when the action leans into those laser sword style beats, it's absolutely going for style points, and it earns them. Sound and score. A major highlight the audio work is one of the movie's secret weapons. The sound design is loud, aggressive, and layered, which fits perfectly for a planet that feels like it's constantly trying to kill you. It gives the environment weight, and it makes every confrontation feel bigger. The score from Sarah Schachner and Benjamin Wallfish also works extremely well. It delivers pounding intensity and eerie sci-fi textures without leaning too hard on nostalgia. It sounds like what you want a modern Predator blockbuster to sound like: distinct, heavy, and confident. Franchise connections and world building. There are also some interesting franchise fingerprints here, especially with Weyland-Yutani being brought into the mix. That doesn't mean aliens show up, but it does push the story closer to that larger universe, at least in tone and thematic overlap. Like the Alien series, this film strongly emphasizes that space isn't wondrous. It's brutal, indifferent, and lethal. Badlands also gives the Yautja more culture than we've ever gotten. Language, communication, and more context for how their society works. For some fans, that may chip away at the mystery that made them so intimidating in earlier films. But it also gives them dimension beyond silent killing machine. And the movie uses that depth to show Dex slowly questioning parts of his own traditions as he forms unexpected bonds. Final thoughts at the end of the day: Predator. Badlands succeeds because it knows exactly what it wants to be: a high-energy sci-fi action movie that actually feels alive. It moves quickly, builds a memorable setting, flips the usual perspective, and delivers a finale that feels earned. No, it's not trying to be groundbreaking, but it is trying to be entertaining, and it's hard to argue with the results. Trachtenberg continues to pull this property forward, and if this is the direction the franchise is heading, there's real potential for more passionate filmmakers to do something fresh inside this world. Final say: fun, fast, stylish, and surprisingly heartfelt. Predator. Badlands is a standout entry in the series and easily one of the most enjoyable big-budget rides of the year. Rather than sticking to the usual Predator in the woods rhythm, Predator, Badlands swings for something bigger and stranger. More space opera than backwoods slasher. The film mixes the sleek, pulpy sheen of classic sci-fi with the franchise's primal hunt DNA, creating a colorful, off-world stage that feels closer to interplanetary adventure than familiar survival horror. That shift alone gives the story room to surprise you. At the center is Deck, a young, undersized Yautja trying to prove he belongs. On first impression, his look and vibe can feel a bit too stylized, almost like the movie is flirting with camp. But once the plot gets moving, that concern fades. Deck's design starts to feel intentional. He's meant to be different from the hulking, mythic predators we're used to. The choices help him stand out without breaking continuity, and by the time the stakes rise, he's unexpectedly easy to root for. The premise is simple and strong. Deck is treated like a liability by his own father, while his brother offers a measure of protection. To earn status and survive being cold, Deck goes to planet Jenna, seeking the head of a legendary beast, the Kalisk, as proof of worth. Of course, he doesn't exactly get a clean landing. Jenna immediately establishes itself as a hostile ecosystem where everything is designed to harm, trap, or consume anything foolish enough to move through it. That's where Thaya enters, a damaged Weyland-Yutani synthetic who's missing her lower half for much of the film. She isn't played for laughs or cheap shock value. Instead, the script treats her condition with surprising care, showing her problem-solving, her stubbornness, and the practical ways she adapts to a brutal world. It becomes part of her character rather than a plot device, and honestly, it's one of the boldest human-ish additions the franchise has made in a long time. Deck and Thaya's partnership begins as pure necessity, transactional, intense. He wants the Kalisk. She wants answers, survival, and the possibility of restoring what she lost. But their dynamic grows into the movie's emotional core, especially once Bud joins them. A strange local creature with scrappy energy and an oddball silhouette. Like the film wanted a little gremlin companion without turning the story into a joke. The humor stays light and intermittent, more like a pressure release valve than a tonal takeover, and it actually fits the alien/predator shared mythos surprisingly well. Jenna is the real showstopper, though. The planet isn't just scenery, it's a tactical obstacle course. Razor-like vegetation, predatory vines, poisonous spines, stampeding megafauna, airborne threats that feel semi-intelligent. The hazards aren't random set dressing. They shape how the characters move, fight, and plan. The best sequences use the environment like a weapon, turning survival into strategy rather than just spectacle. The movie's escalation kicks in hard when Tessa, another synthetic tied to Thaya's past, also portrayed by the same actor, reappears in a massive, bright exosuit. From there, the film leans into the kind of big sci-fi set pieces the franchise has teased before but rarely commits to. Action staging stays punchy and immersive, often feeling like a third-person action game in the best way. Close tracking, clear geography, and fights that emphasize momentum and improvisation. You still get plenty of Predator tech and weaponry, but the film uses them to create variety rather than just repeating greatest hits. Just when it seems ready to wrap, the story tacks on a final confrontation by bringing Deck's father back into the picture. It could have felt like an unnecessary one more boss fight, but instead it works as a lore beat, reframing Deck's journey as more than a single rite of passage and hinting at what the clan dynamics could become going forward. The mid-credits sting, suggesting that Mother is on the way, feels like a clear promise. The creative team wants to expand this corner of the universe rather than resetting to the default formula. There are things some viewers will bounce off. The PG-13 approach keeps the violence from drowning the screen in gore, and the found family angle may read as a tonal pivot for people who want predators to stay purely monstrous. But this specific story, predators, synths, and an alien ecosystem that isn't just another alien crossover, doesn't actually need constant blood-soaked shock to land. There's still plenty of brutality. It's just not painted in endless bright red. In the end, Predator, Badlands is better than it has any right to be. It takes a real swing, new POV, new planet, fresh character dynamics, and it mostly connects. If future installments keep this level of world building and resist being rushed into crowded release windows, this could be the direction that finally gives the franchise the longevity it's been chasing. When Deck drops onto this harsh alien world, he thinks he's stepping into a straightforward hunt, track down the legendary Kalisk, and bring home a trophy worthy of his people. What he doesn't understand at least not at first, is that the planet doesn't care who the hunter is. Out here, everything is hunting something, and Deck is very much on the menu. Early on, Deck crosses paths with Thaya, a Weyland-Yutani synth who becomes the most unexpected part of his journey. She's not just helping him, she's dealing with her own mission and her own damage. Literally, Thaya's body has been severed, and she's determined to recover what was taken from her, while also chasing a deeply personal thread, reconnecting with her sister, Tessa. That shared sense of being incomplete, physically for Thaya, socially and emotionally for Deck, creates a bond that feels earned rather than forced. The mid-credits sting, suggesting that Mother is on the way, feels like a clear promise. The creative team wants to expand this corner of the universe rather than resetting to the default formula. There are things some viewers will bounce off. The PG-13 approach keeps the violence from drowning the screen in gore, and the found family angle may read as a tonal pivot for people who want predators to stay purely monstrous. But this specific story, predators, synths, and an alien ecosystem that isn't just another alien crossover, doesn't actually need constant blood-soaked shock to land. There's still plenty of brutality. It's just not painted in endless bright red. In the end, Predator, Badlands is better than it has any right to be. It takes a real swing, new POV, new planet, fresh character dynamics, and it mostly connects. If future installments keep this level of world building and resist being rushed into crowded release windows, this could be the direction that finally gives the franchise the longevity it's been chasing. When Deck drops onto this harsh alien world, he thinks he's stepping into a straightforward hunt. Track down the legendary Kalisk and bring home a trophy worthy of his people. What he doesn't understand, at least not at first, is that the planet doesn't care who the hunter is. Out here, everything is hunting something, and Deck is very much on the menu. Early on, Deck crosses paths with Thaya, a Weyland-Yutani synth who becomes the most unexpected part of his journey. She's not just helping him, she's dealing with her own mission and her own damage. Literally, Thaya's body has been severed, and she's determined to recover what was taken from her, while also chasing a deeply personal thread, reconnecting with her sister, Tessa. That shared sense of being incomplete, physically for Thaya, socially and emotionally for Deck, creates a bond that feels earned rather than forced. The mid-credits sting, suggesting that Mother is on the way, feels like a clear promise. The creative team wants to expand this corner of the universe rather than resetting to the default formula. There are things some viewers will bounce off. The PG-13 approach keeps the violence from drowning the screen in gore, and the found family angle may read as a tonal pivot for people who want predators to stay purely monstrous. But this specific story, predators, synths, and an alien ecosystem that isn't just another alien crossover, doesn't actually need constant blood-soaked shock to land. There's still plenty of brutality. It's just not painted in endless bright red. In the end, Predator, Badlands is better than it has any right to be. It takes a real swing, new POV, new planet, fresh character dynamics, and it mostly connects. If future installments keep this level of world building and resist being rushed into crowded release windows, this could be the direction that finally gives the franchise the longevity it's been chasing. When Deck drops onto this harsh alien world, he thinks he's stepping into a straightforward hunt. Track down the legendary Kalisk and bring home a trophy worthy of his people. What he doesn't understand, at least not at first, is that the planet doesn't care who the hunter is. Out here, everything is hunting something, and Deck is very much on the menu. Early on, Deck crosses paths with Thaya, a Weyland-Yutani synth who becomes the most unexpected part of his journey. She's not just helping him, she's dealing with her own mission and her own damage. Literally, Thaya's body has been severed, and she's determined to recover what was taken from her, while also chasing a deeply personal thread, reconnecting with her sister, Tessa. That shared sense of being incomplete, physically for Thaya, socially and emotionally for Deck, creates a bond that feels earned rather than forced. The big hook is the film's smartest twist. Dan Trachtenberg and Patrick Eisen flip the expected predator formula by tossing Deck into an environment where being a predator doesn't automatically make you the apex threat. The Kalisk are still the prized endgame for anyone chasing glory, but the story is less about collecting a trophy and more about what Deck has to become to survive long enough to even attempt it. What surprised me most is how well the movie balances survival tension with character work. Beneath the claws, gadgets, and brutal set pieces, Badlands is still a story about approval, about being judged by a family or culture that refuses to accept you as you are. Dexar carries that weight, and Thia's search for connection gives the film a grounding emotional line that the franchise doesn't always prioritize. The narrative stays lively, too. It moves with purpose, drops in enough humor to keep it from feeling one note, and still makes space for the world to breathe. I also have to give credit where it's due. I didn't expect to enjoy a story told from a predator's point of view as much as I did. But the movie commits to the idea, and it works. One more big swing. There are essentially no humans here. Instead, the synths fill that gap without hijacking the tone. They don't turn the movie into a different franchise. They just widen the universe enough to feel fresh while still keeping the predator identity intact. And while the climax leans slightly predictable in structure, the movie rebounds with a reveal at the end that feels like a confident, here's where we want to go next. Whether you love that direction or not, you can feel a clear creative hand shaping the future of the series. The big hook is the film's smartest twist. Dan Trachtenberg and Patrick Eisen flip the expected predator formula by tossing Deck into an environment where being a predator doesn't automatically make you the apex threat. The Kalisk are still the prized endgame for anyone chasing glory, but the story is less about collecting a trophy and more about what Deck has to become to survive long enough to even attempt it. What surprised me most is how well the movie balances survival tension with character work. Beneath the claws, gadgets, and brutal set pieces, Badlands is still a story about approval, about being judged by a family or culture that refuses to accept you as you are. Dexar carries that weight, and Thia's search for connection gives the film a grounding emotional line that the franchise doesn't always prioritize. The narrative stays lively, too. It moves with purpose, drops in enough humor to keep it from feeling one note, and still makes space for the world to breathe. I also have to give credit where it's due. I didn't expect to enjoy a story told from a predator's point of view as much as I did. But the movie commits to the idea, and it works. One more big swing. There are essentially no humans here. Instead, the synths fill that gap without hijacking the tone. They don't turn the movie into a different franchise. They just widen the universe enough to feel fresh while still keeping the predator identity intact. And while the climax leans slightly predictable in structure, the movie rebounds with a reveal at the end that feels like a confident, here's where we want to go next. Whether you love that direction or not, you can feel a clear creative hand shaping the future of the series. Like creature and world design, the planet feels dangerous and distinct, not just Earth but Rescund. Pacing rarely drags, keeps escalating without exhausting you. Action and combat variety, more tactics and survival problem solving than mindless blasting. Comedy, surprisingly effective and better controlled than some past entries. Score/soundtrack, a strong mix of orchestral power with tribal flavor that still screams Predator. Performances, limited cast, but solid presence and personality. Character development, Deck gets more depth than the Hunt and Roar template. Story and world-building thoughts the Predator franchise has a history of stumbling into familiar traps. Recycled beats, cheesy finishes, and not enough emotional buy-in. Lately, it's been correcting course, and Badlands continues that sharper approach that's been rebuilding momentum since Prey. The environment is one of the film's biggest strengths. The alien wildlife and terrain feel like they belong in a bigger connected universe, and the movie uses that ecosystem to pressure Deck in ways that human Prey never could. Deck's tech is recognizable enough to feel Predator, but the film sprinkles in new tools and tweaks without making him absurdly overpowered, which I really appreciated. Visually, some design choices may divide fans. Yes, even down to style details like the new look, but overall the animation and presentation fit the tone. It may not hit perfect realism at every moment, yet it still sells the world. Dislikes not particularly scary, more action survival than horror. Humor occasionally gets a bit campy. A few moments feel like softening the edges. Feels like there are extra lanes the movie could have explored, Deck's background and trials could have gone deeper. At times, it plays things slightly safe, especially compared to the darker bite of earlier entries. Final take / verdict Predator. Badlands ended up being better than I expected because it's genuinely entertaining. And more importantly, it tries something different without losing the franchise's identity. The design and sound alone are worth a theater visit if you can swing it. And the film's mix of action, character focus, and forward-looking ending makes it feel like the series is building towards something rather than spinning its wheels. If you want the pure horror suspense of the earliest Predator vibes, you might miss that darker edge. But if you're open to a Predator story that's more survival-driven, character-centered, and occasionally funny, without collapsing into parody, Badlands is a strong entry, and a promising sign for where the franchise could go next. I'm going to be honest, this is one of the most split-down-the-middle experiences I've had with a Predator movie in a long time, because I really enjoyed it, and at the same time, I kept feeling like it drifted away from what made Predator feel like Predator. Let's start with what works, because there's a lot. One of the biggest surprises for me is just how hard the film leans into sci-fi. And I mean real sci-fi. Yes, every Predator movie technically qualifies because we're talking about an alien hunter, but Badlands feels like it pushes that concept further. The setting alone makes it stand out. Another planet, strange environments, multiple alien species, and androids all over the place. It adds a layer of imagination that makes the whole movie feel visually different from most previous entries. For a franchise that could easily fall into repeating the same beats, this one actually feels like it's trying to refresh the look, the tone, and the scale. And that freshness is amplified by the boldest creative choice. The Predator is basically the main character. I was skeptical going in, because Predator works best when the creature is an unknowable nightmare in the shadows. But surprisingly, it works. The film gives us a Predator protagonist, Deck, and somehow he ends up having a real arc. You can feel the prove-yourself warrior angle driving him. And even if that core storyline isn't groundbreaking, the way the movie builds around it gives it energy. The heart of the movie is the relationship between Deck and his android companion, played by Elle. Their dynamic gives off a buddy movie vibe, and it's honestly the soul of the film. There's also this small creature, Bud, who adds unexpected charm and helps broaden the appeal without totally derailing the story. It's one of those things that shouldn't work on paper, but it somehow does. The action is another win. The fights are exciting, the hunt elements are fun, and the pacing is mostly strong, especially early on. The opening is one of the most gripping intros we've had in this series in a while. It grabs you immediately and makes you feel like the movie is going to swing big, and for the most part it follows through. Visually, the world building is impressive. The landscapes are vast, dark, and atmospheric. At times it gave me Dune-like vibes with the scale and mood, and the new creatures occasionally reminded me of Avatar, in the sense that the ecosystem feels like it has a lot going on beyond the main plot. Whether every design lands perfectly is another conversation, but the ambition is clear. Performance-wise, it's hard to review Deck in the traditional sense because of the prosthetics and digital work, but the voice and physical performance from Dimi Amatangi really sells the character. And Elle is excellent. She nails the android role with a lot of personality and presence. The cast is pretty focused overall, but those two carry the movie. So yeah, on the entertainment level, this movie delivers. It's fun, it's well shot, it's creative, and it doesn't act like it has to be ultra serious every second or its place. But here's where I get conflicted. As entertaining as this is, I still don't think it fully recaptures the horror/thriller edge that the franchise was built on. The earliest Predator films had this constant dread, the sense that anyone could drop at any moment, that the hunt was terrifying, and that survival wasn't guaranteed. Here, even when things get intense, the film doesn't always maintain that frightening, unknown energy. It's more of an action-adventure ride than a nightmare hunt. And I get why some people are calling this the Disney-fied Predator. Not because it's bad, but because it's so polished and sometimes feels like it's been softened. The comedy and broader tone will absolutely work for more viewers, and the movie is definitely more accessible. But for longtime fans who came for fear, tension, and brutal suspense, the lighter touch might feel like it's sanding down the franchise's sharpest edges. My other major issue is the Predator design in this one. From the moment I saw the trailers, the creature design didn't hit for me. The Predator looks a bit too human in proportions, and, more than that, it looks too clean. The original creature in the first film felt raw and physical, sweaty, grimy, truly alien. Here, the Predators often have this glossy, digital look, almost like high-end video game models. I understand why. The movie is packed with movement-heavy action sequences and big-scale battles that would be hard to pull off with only practical effects. But still, I think the face and texture could have been handled with more weight and realism. We've seen this problem before. Even in other modern entries, you sometimes get one design that looks great and another that feels like a CGI experiment that didn't fully translate. So, I don't think it's a they couldn't do it issue. It feels more like a creative direction choice, and it just wasn't the choice I wanted. That said, once you accept that this movie is basically a fully stylized sci-fi spectacle, alien planet, weird creatures everywhere, heavy digital environments, it goes down much easier. The fake feeling becomes part of the package. So where do I land? I think Predator. Badlands is one of the most entertaining entries we've gotten in a while, and it deserves credit for trying something new, especially by giving the Predator real character depth and building a strong companion dynamic. But I also think it's a movie that may leave some fans, like me, missing that classic Predator identity, the fear, the tension, and that brutal, nerve-shredding uncertainty of the hunt. Still, if this is the direction they want to explore, and if Dan Trachtenberg stays involved, I'm interested. Because even when I disagree with the choices, I can't deny this. The movie is ambitious, it's creative, and it's a genuinely fun ride. Going into Predator, Badlands, I honestly had mixed expectations, and I'm coming out with mixed feelings too. First, the visuals. I genuinely like the environment a lot. The palette, the lighting, the way the landscapes pop on screen. There's a strong alien world vibe, and it looks ambitious. But at the same time, something about the presentation kept pulling me out. Even the humans, yes, they're synthetics, but still played by actors, had this oddly artificial sheen, like they didn't fully belong in the frame. If that sounds strange, the closest comparison I can give is the recent Lion King. It's technically live action, but everything is so digitally built that it unmistakably looks like CGI. That's the same feeling I got here. Beautiful, yes, but also noticeably manufactured. Now, I won't dig into plot details because I want to stay spoiler-free, but I will talk about tone and direction because that's where this movie becomes divisive. This film makes a bold choice. It doesn't just humanize the Predator in design or screen presence. It does it in behavior and personality too. And I'm torn about it. Part of me enjoyed following Dec and Thaya and the emotional thread they're given. There's a genuine attempt at heart here, friendship, belonging, proving yourself, that kind of thing. But another part of me kept thinking, this doesn't feel like the Predator I grew up with. Yes, we've seen Yaoja communicate before, even speaking human languages in some entries and expanded lore, so it's not like communication itself is forbidden. But Badlands takes it much further. Dec expresses himself constantly, reacts like a person, and talks far more than I ever expected. I'm used to the Predator as the quiet nightmare, the patient stalker, the calculated hunter, the presence that's scarier because it doesn't need to explain itself. Here, the creature feels emotionally readable in a way that's off-brand for what made the original so haunting. And that brings me to the biggest point. This movie is fun, but it doesn't feel like horror. The original Predator may be action, but it's also absolutely a horror film. It's the kind of movie that can stick with you for years, especially if you saw it too young. I did, and yeah, it lived in my head for a long time. Badlands goes in the opposite direction. This is a blockbuster adventure with a softer edge. Honestly, kids could watch this. And if it hasn't happened already, I'd bet money, merch, and toys are either planned or already in motion, because the film is built to be crowd-pleasing rather than unsettling. Performance-wise, the cast does solid work. Dimi Schuster Kaloamatangi gives Dek a lot of emotional weight, and he sells the character's inner conflict well. Elle Fanning is a standout too, especially because she gets a show range. Thaya is warm, witty, and surprisingly sweet, while Tessa is the total reverse, cold, harsh, and genuinely unpleasant in the way the story needs. That contrast works, and she handles it like someone who knows exactly what she's doing. Dan Trachtenberg's direction is confident again. He knows how to stage action cleanly and keep momentum moving, and the film is packed with set pieces. The camera work is energetic, the world design is strong, and the costume work helps sell the setting. The digital effects are generally impressive, though like I said earlier, they sometimes cross that line where you feel the tech rather than forget it's there. And yes, there are clear nods toward alien territory. The Weyland-Yutani presence and the specimen energy are not subtle, and it adds a layer of sci-fi crossover flavor that's going to make some fans really happy. Action-wise, the movie delivers. A big chunk of the runtime is basically action-forward, and some sequences are legitimately a blast, especially the moments where Dek has to improvise and outsmart enemies rather than just overpower them. Those scenes are tense in an action sense, and they're entertaining. But here's the catch. This doesn't really play like a Predator movie. It plays more like a modern mainstream franchise film, almost Marvel-coded in pacing and emotional framing. It has humor, betrayal, sentimentality, personal growth, and even a creature that feels suspiciously designed to be cute enough to sell. And that's where I think a lot of longtime fans will split hard. What used to be a terrifying movie monster with mysterious rules and brutal menace has been reshaped into a protagonist you're meant to bond with. So if I judge it purely as its own sci-fi action film, I'm close to calling it an August 10th, maybe even a September 10th on a good day. But it's not being sold as a new creature in a new world. It's being sold as Predator. And the branding matters because it invites you to compare it to the source material. And when you do, the gap is impossible to ignore. It's simply too different in atmosphere, tone, and identity. Which leads to the big question I walked out with. Is the Predator we know basically gone, replaced by this new direction? Or will we eventually get a return to the darker, more horror-leaning style? Maybe even alongside this new era version? Time will tell. My final rating, 7 out of 10. I did have fun. I was entertained. But it drifts so far from what made Predator feel like Predator that it ends up feeling like a different franchise wearing familiar armor. Your kids can absolutely watch this one. Honestly, they should, because it works great as its own sci-fi action movie, and it's a blast from start to finish. That said, I wouldn't want every Predator movie going forward to follow this exact formula. Weirdly, both things can be true at once. Overall, Predator, Badlands is a strong entry that's energetic, fun, and genuinely entertaining. Some longtime fans will probably be frustrated by the direction it takes, but I personally like seeing the franchise take a risk and aim for a new angle. And now I'm really curious what Dan Trachtenberg does next. When I look back at the Predator franchise, I honestly only consider a handful of the films truly great, whether we're talking about the classic 80s original or the more recent Prey. The series has been wildly inconsistent over the years. Predator 2, the Alien vs. Predator movies, and The Predator didn't really work for me. But Prey, 2022, completely revived my interest, and Trachtenberg proved he understands what audiences want from this universe. And he didn't stop there. His animated feature Predator, Killer of Killers, might even be my personal favorite, because it showed just how flexible and imaginative this world can be. So, of course, when Predator, Badlands got announced, my hype level went up. Now that I've seen it, I can say it delivers on almost everything I was hoping for. The story centers on a young Predator named Dek, an underdog among his people who's treated like the weak link of his clan. After being humiliated and rejected by his father, Dek becomes obsessed with